Who is he? That...
David Lean rose from making tea in the era of silent cinema to making the great Oscar-winning blockbusters of the 50s and 60s. Breathtaking epics crafted out of demanding landscapes and shot over years at a high mental and physical cost to all involved. They defined a new benchmark for the big screen.
A bridge on the River Kwai, played against the naked canvas of war.
This is Dr. Zhivago.
We know him as a debonair international film director, but he preferred to spend time with his crew, a core team of experts in their fields who were equal to his demand for perfection in every detail, and who would commit the best part of their lives to him. Good films, he once said, can be made only by a crew of dedicated maniacs. This is the story of 4 of his men, who between them spent almost a century proving his point.
Do you remember Brief Encounter, in which we serve Oliver Twist, Sam Barrier and Hobson's Choice? Because these are just some of the films made by David Lean. Sitting where his actor normally sits and feeling happy?
No, I don't really like it at all. I feel that at any moment I'm going to get up and just go behind the camera there and leave you to it.
He was looking for people who were not clock watchers, put it that way, people who were as dedicated to the making of the picture as he was.
There was nothing very devious about David, you know. He went straight to the throat always.
I mean, David could be a hard taskmaster. Yes, of course he was. But I mean, he's responsible for a big budget movie.
David always said to me, "You should be able to cut out any frame of a roll of film and put a picture frame around it and hang it on the wall and admire it. Any one single cut." That's true.
Now, you as the director are really the coordinator, aren't you, of cameras and lights and artists and so on?
Yes, as a coordinator, he, making a film concerns, many hundreds of people. And he is the man that gets them all together to put that final result onto the screen.
It's a sort of creative club when it works well, and David at the apex of the club, shall we say.
A directing career that would extend to 16 films started in earnest during the wartime with In Which We Serve, and Norman Spencer was one of the crew.
I first met David Lean at Denham Studios, and next to the cutting block was a little coffee bar, and we used to call in there when we could skive off from shooting or whatever we were doing. And I was interested in him because he was a real film buff. I mean, he just loved film. We'd have abstract discussions like, what is the best way to shoot a man slipping on a banana skin? And he lived in Denham Village with Kay Walsh, his wife. My wife was called Barbara, and we became a sort of foursome and friends, but we talked nothing but films. Must have been very boring for our wives.
As Lean's directing career flourished, Norman's talents as co-scriptwriter and coordinator made him indispensable.
All my pictures were with David Lean then. I mean, I just automatically assumed that his next picture would be my next picture.
Is a director's life as ulcer-making, as people say?
No, I must tell you, I've never had an ulcer. I hope I never do, but I enjoyed this job more than anything I can imagine. I think I'm very lucky. In fact, if I had the money in the bank, I would pay the film people to engage me.
As the expert behind the camera, Peter Newbrook worked with David Lean for 11 years.
I'm one of the few people that worked with him and never fell out with him, which I suppose in the Lean canon is something of an achievement. If you had an idea and you thought it was a good idea, he wouldn't mind you pursuing it and even arguing with him over a shot.
I just love, I love photographs. I love a thing like that camera. I wanted to go and look through it. In fact, I think I looked through it yesterday. I'm very attracted by lights, film. I even like the feel of film.
He was completely obsessed with the image, the story, and every aspect of the picture making. When he would do a rehearsal, he would look through the camera and he would absolutely want the frame to be exactly as he envisaged it. He wouldn't want it to be a little bit to the left, a bit to the right, and therefore that he relied on the camera people very much to put on the screen what he wanted, because we had no video monitors in those days.
If camera operators provided the eyes, then the go-between for Lean and his actors throughout the 60s was assistant director Michael Stevenson.
Well, I worked as one of David Lean's assistant directors over the last 11, 12 years. David Lean's very quiet and sometimes very shy and very modest. He's quiet, that's why he has assistants with him. They're the people who can do the shouting.
But I'd done a couple of very, very big films just before working with David, but working with David Lean, wow, people said, wow, going out in the desert, going to be there a year, living in a tent, that's fine. But it was a wonderful experience. It was like being in the army, but getting paid. But it was a fantastic, and David was so wonderful to all of us. It never fazed him what background you came from. He was interested in what you had to say.
And never was this more apparent than when legendary effects and location master Eddie Fowley became Lean's most trusted right-hand man over 4 decades.
David Lean was my best friend, and I was destined to become his best friend. In fact, he used to call me his brother. He came to see a set I'd just finished dressing, the prisoner of war camp for the bridge over the River Kwai. All went down well, and we got inside the hut, Saito's hut, where he had to look out the window and see the prisoner in that oven out there. And David looked at that window for a few minutes and said, hang a nice white orchid in that window. And I thought, gotcha. He likes to have a touch. David always said to me, if you're going to kill somebody, do it in a beautiful place.
It's sometimes very hard, very good to play what we call play against the scene. In other words, if you want a very romantic love scene, it's sometimes very good to play it against a dirty brick wall. While if you play it against beautiful mountains, the mountains are competing with you, and you have 2 layers of romance, as it were.
I understood him. I could interpret what he was going to do before he did it.
David Lean's career as a director had begun in the middle of World War II in a Britain far removed from our time, a time where everything and everyone had its place. As the world opened up, Lean's films would too, but that wartime rigor and immutability would continue with David's ongoing obsession with capturing a script, and nothing else mattered.
He's got a huge reverence for the script. He could never, I mean, he's not able to shoot off the cuff. He really can't do it. He has to have it scripted and think about it.
What happens is that I sit down at my typewriter and I start at the beginning and I make a complete blueprint. I try to imagine what the finished movie is going to look like on the screen, with cuts and everything in it. I do it as I hope I'll see it. I know this is against a lot of the new school, but I personally am very wary of improvisation.
His great problem was, he used to call it his constipation, was that he could not find a subject to make into a film.
I search around, I go into bookshops, look for novels, and I think within 6 feet of me there must be a marvellous film subject, but there never is.
We used to discuss everything. We discussed making a film about skiing or mountain climbing. We discussed making a film about the conquest of Everest as the background to the story. I mean, that was my job, really. We'd talk.
When a suitable idea had finally been found, constipation gave way to the likelihood of exhaustion.
Oh boy, I say to people who think one sits back in a chair with a megaphone, I say, you know, the hardest thing in making a movie, particularly a big movie, outdoors, is fighting tiredness.
It was a fight Lean lost on location in Venice for Summertime, starring Katharine Hepburn, but his core team proved they'd do anything to keep David afloat.
We were doing a sequence where Katie walked from the canal steamer to the pensione with the porter carrying her bags. And David arrived, sat in his chair, and he promptly fell asleep. And he was very, very cagey about the producer, because he thought the producer was always spying on him and keeping an eye on his schedule and so forth. And after about 10 or 15 minutes, I said to Jack Hildyard, the director of photography, I said, we better do something, because if Elia Lopert comes along and sees David fast asleep, he'll go absolutely crackers. So with that, I got my grip and the assistant to lay down some tracks, and we mounted the camera crane on it, and Jack lit it, and we had to walk through with a couple of stand-ins, and David woke up. He said, what are you doing? I said, well, I've got a setup. I said, good, because I thought we better do something in case Lopert suddenly arrives. So he said, show me then. So we got on the crane, and we walked the shop through again with the stand-ins. He turned to me with that terrible icy glare. He said, is that your idea of a setup? I said, yes. He said, it's very good, let's do it. You know, that's how he was. I mean, you know, but if he hadn't been any good, he would certainly have said so.
If Lean found the Venice schedule exhausting, it was nothing by comparison with the trials of his next film, Bridge on the River Kwai. Shot on location in Ceylon over 8 grueling months, the crew paid a high price for David's vision.
All through the monsoon, people were bitten by leeches, we had dysentery. It was hardly anybody. I think there were only about 4 of us that went through the picture without going sick. That would give you some idea of the difficulty of the picture.
Directing his first tree epic film, Lean had little time for the crew's tribulations.
Don't think he ever thought about it. You just, you know, get on with it.
We built a dam at the bridge over the River Kwai so we could control the river up and down. It was a big dam, and somebody fell off it into the vortex side and never surfaced, because it really was a vortex, you know. And you could see the man's head coming up down here.
The stuntman Frank Howard was eventually pulled out of the water, only to die later in hospital. Despite this horrific accident, Lean proceeded with the film, until it came to shooting what was potentially the most dangerous scene.
The scene is that a train loaded with Japanese troops is about to cross the bridge, and the commandos want to blow it up at that moment. Everybody assembled to watch the shooting, the blowing up of the bridge, because once blown up, that was so you could only do it once. People from the Ceylon government came, everybody watched. The driver was instructed to proceed about 25 miles an hour, and just before it entered the bridge, he was to jump off and let the train continue on its own, because it would be blown up and fall in the river.
When we were going to blow up that bridge, which we'd built with trees we cut down from the jungle up there, with the help of elephants, all by elephants, no cranes or anything like that. And we had 5 cameras out there in different places
in the river.
When we were going to blow up that bridge, which we'd built with trees we cut down from the jungle up there, with the help of elephants, all by elephants, no cranes or anything like that. And we had 5 cameras out there in different places, and each cameraman had a sandbag enclosure. When he was safe, he pressed a button, and we knew where we were going to fire the thing, then we could press the button.
All 4 cameramen did it except one. He was so excited he forgot to throw the switch.
As the train approached the bridge, Lean could not be sure that one of the cameramen had reached safety and aborted the explosion.
But apart from that, the train went across at an enormous speed and crashed off the far end, knocked the generator over a cliff, and went on into the jungle.
We had to spend the whole of that night getting it back on the rails again, getting it back. The second day, everything went well.
And David said, you'll drive the train. You're the only one I can trust to get that thing going at the right speed.